Hello, everybody. You are listening to Season 2, Episode 3 of the 50-something podcast.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the 50-something podcast with me, Andy Barlow, age 57.
And me, Benita Matofska, age 57, but I'm a very special 3 months younger.
She says this every time.
I do, but I have to.
Yeah. She thinks she's winning because she's slightly younger. Anyway, what have you been up to? I know you've been up to doing really exciting things recently, so just give us a quick update and let's get started.
Well, it has been non-stop, even in my kind of non-stop kind of way. So yesterday was a really exciting day. As you know, I work as a public speaker. And yesterday we were launching a really fantastic project at the Dome in Brighton at the Corn Exchange, really big venue in Brighton, really exciting new venue, actually, that's the Corn Exchange. It's had a huge multi-million pound renovation. And it was for a project called Sussex Bay, which is to regenerate and restore 100 miles of coastline, of Sussex coastline. So there's been kind of massive regeneration. There's all kinds of problems around our blue ecosystems and on trawlers and all kinds of environmental destruction. Sewage, has been a lot of sewage, and believe me, I swim, so it's all the kind of, I was on my way down to the event and there was a big poster saying, we've been swimming in shit, and I just thought, well, there is some truth in that. I try and avoid it those days when there's an outflow. But yeah, this has been a big problem. So this is a really positive project. It's 5 years in the making, and it's bringing together 11 councils along 100 miles of coastline. And I was their keynote speaker. So it was my job to start the day. And my talk was all about blue magic. So I took them through 10 reasons to believe in blue magic and 10 stops that we were making along the Sussex Bay coastline. So we kind of went from Selsey in the west to Camber Sands in the east. And yeah, had a lot of fun. Fantastic. So that was my yesterday, but awesome. It's been quite busy just preparing presentations and all that kind of stuff. And of course, finding time to have a bit of fun as well. You've got to do that, you know.
You do.
Well, I've got to get some cacao ceremonies in and a bit of yoga and the odds.
We know after the last pod about your manic fitness, freakiness,
and that as well,
and hot yoga and ever so bright and stuff. Yeah. On that, I've continued with my Zoe.
Yeah, how is
and
Zoe?
Since our last pod, I've actually lost 3 kilograms.
Fantastic.
I'm running nearly every day, and so things are getting there. But anyway, in this pod, our main focus, every time now, we're going to have a real focus on why we're doing this, what we want to celebrate about being in our 50s. This time, we're talking about fearlessness. And who better to bring in to actually talk about this than somebody who has been director at WPP, co-founder of Edge Creative Agency, chief innovation officer at Principal Global, then founder of Honest, and then founder of Honest by Principal and CIO of Principal Group. She is ambassador for Future Dreams breast cancer charity. She's a leadership coach, strategic consultant for business growth, and a publisher an author of 2 books. One, a novel, Colourful Creatures. Another one, a strategic business guide, I want to call it, called Think Fearlessly to Grow Healthy. Then last year, she launched a new business described as a British luxury lifestyle brand with a French twist called Land of Colourful Creatures. I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Julia Leckey and I'm 50 years young. So I'm going to go with that thing. And yeah, thanks, Andy, for having me. And I think, like you said, as a bit of a nutshell story, I do everything in 2s. I'm a mum of 2 boys, one's just going to his A-levels at the moment. I've set up and founded from startup to sale 2 businesses, 2 7-figure businesses. The first one being Edge. I hear it's now Edge Tonic, but not when I was the owner. I've written 2 books, a novel and a non-fiction and a fiction book. And I've set up 2 new businesses, which you just said, and I've had 2 very aggressive cancers. So that has led to a journey and a lifetime journey around tools to and ways and techniques to think fearlessly. Because I think if you're setting up a business, you've been a mum of two boys, you've been through cancer, the commonality is really having a mindset which is embraces fearlessness. And that doesn't mean you live with fear. There's no fear at all. It just means that fear is not the driver of your car. It's a passenger. So I've worked really hard at that over the years to be blossoming today, which I have to say I am. I'm really happy, really joyful, and in a great space.
And you just seem to be somebody with unstoppable energy, driving forward, not a moment to spare. You're not wasting any of your life.
Definitely not.
Julia, I'm just thinking about this whole idea of the fearless mindset. I'm quite fascinated by that. So tell me a bit more about what is a fearless mindset?
A fearless mindset is curiosity. It's about growth. It's about momentum. It's about thinking, planning, and doing. The opposite of a fearless mindset is being stuck, being paralyzed, being fearful, and being like in a big, muddy field where you can't get out. So I'm a massive advocate of moving forward, movement, growth, curiosity.
So how do you because it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I love the whole idea of this fearless mindset. I like to think that I have a fearless mindset, but I suppose how do you get to that point? Because you've obviously had these huge challenges. I mean, overcoming 2 lots of cancer, aggressive cancers. I mean, that's extraordinary in of itself. What a journey you have been on. And when we do face these life-threatening or life-challenging situations, then obviously it's that whole old adage of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I get that. But I suppose, can anyone adopt a fearless mindset? Like do you have to have a tragic, challenge in your life or difficulty, or can anybody get there? And what do you need to get there?
I think anybody can build a fearless mindset. And I think you start off, number one, with understanding if you are living in that space. And if you are living in a space of fear, it's recognizing it and getting awareness out of it. And then I think there's some tools and techniques around building a really good sense of self-love, self-belief, and really unlocking your own growth. Learning and growing for me is massive. I'm constantly doing courses, going on training, redoing things. And I think bit by bit, you can really lean into it. And there's a lot of things around having a joyful life, being surrounded by a community of great people. I'm massively into the 100-year life and the blue zones theories about community, radical remission, how people have cured themselves from stage 4 cancer. And if you look at those tips, there's a big commonality of learning and growing, community, and really building momentum. It's not about shrinking, retracting. It's about growing, expanding, and understanding where you're at, and a lot of self-examination. And you know what? Enjoy that. We don't spend enough time really thinking about ourselves, our wants, our needs, and where we want to go. And then we end up in spaces we can't imagine we even thought we were going to get. So I think it's a lot about determining where you want to go and building a roadmap towards it, but enjoying the journey on the way.
I presume this is what you talk about when you do your business coaching as well.
Massively. I mean, the biggest thing when I do my business coaching is I coach individuals, businesses, and I go in and work with big corporations as well. And the common ground again is this feeling of fear, of feeling stuck, of being paralyzed and inactive. And actually, with entrepreneurs, I can't set up my business. I don't believe in myself. But actually, I think if you start to unlock them, I set up my first business when I was 30. I had a 10-month-old. And I'm incredibly grateful for the journey I had. We built the business in 8 years to 68 people, multi-million-pound turnover. And it really is about leaning into really thinking about what you want, really planning a route forward, and then just getting on with it. 1,000 steps. And every day you wake up and you do something a little bit more towards that step. But just make sure you enjoy the journey, because, it's a long way to climb when you're building a business. So you've got to make sure along the way you're having a really healthy, balanced life.
Is there a common big fear with business owners?
Well, I think a lot of people think about it. It's like so many people said to me, I really want to write a book. The amount of people I've had it. And actually, anybody can write a book. You just have to wake up every day and write 300 words or 500 words. And by the end of the year, you've got a book. I think it's just the idea of it is quite overwhelmingly fearful. But actually, if you create a plan, you get stuck in, and every day you work towards it. And you have to believe you can do it every single day. Wake up and say, yep, I'm going to achieve what I want to do, and I'm going to get to where I want to be. So there's a lot of self-belief and action. I'm a very action-based person.
Quite often the hardest thing I find is that very first step. It's sort of taking that leap. And I suppose what's the key to that? So, if people are in that place of fear, and we can all talk about, we've all got a million ideas, but it's taking that first step to actually do it. So what for you helps someone to make that leap, to make that jump?
I think it's about, for me, I think it's really about creating a plan. And sometimes people are in jobs they hate, they're in careers they really don't like, they're in lives and situations they don't like. So there's two things that happen. Either one, there's a crisis and there's so much pain around it that they have to change. Or two, they get really inspired by intermental things and they think, I really want to start moving. But either way, how do you start when you're climbing up that cliff? Start, moving across the way. You have to start planning, creating, crafting, until you feel like you've got a solid foundation. And when people first talk to me about, I want to set up a new business idea, and they're all fearful, I'm saying, where's your plan? And I tell you what, 90% of the time, it's not written down. There's no financials behind it. There's no ideation behind it. There's no planning behind it. And something that sits in your head has no weight, in my opinion. I think it has to be written down, crafted, articulated. And then it starts to become real. Then your mind, body, soul starts to believe in it. And you start to believe that new reality. And I love Joe Dispenza, How to Rewire the Brain. It's all about believing you're in the space you want to be before you've even got there. Because there's such an energy around that future planning. It pulls you forward.
Do you find this translates over into your personal life? So, we're talking about businesses and how businesses may be fearful and living in working in a particular space. I work a lot in sustainability, and I come up against that fear all the time. That in order to get people to change behaviour, we've worked in this particular way for years, so we're fearful about making changes. So do you find that a lot of the coaching and the work that you're doing is about behaviour change? Is it about encouraging people, guiding people to change their behaviour?
I think it's a mindset thing, and what that means is around helping somebody to guide them along the way and putting wind beneath their sails. Because if you don't believe it yourself, it's not about telling someone what to do. It's about you believing yourself that you've got a good plan and a good strategy. And in order to do that, you've got to write it down. You've got to live it. You've got to believe it. And you've got to then start doing tiny steps towards it every single day. So for me, it's a real a mindset. And obviously, even relating it back to, I always say this when anybody, I do a lot of coaching for people going through cancer as well. And it's 98% in the brain. It's that sense of self-belief and belief that you're going to come through it. You're going to make those changes, and you're going to really act upon what you really, really want to do.
So do you work mainly with creative industry businesses, or do you work across the board? Do you work with anybody?
Yeah, now I work across the board. I work with entrepreneurial startups. I work with, small product brands. Helped a lady last year who had a great idea for a hair care range. Sarah Jane Crawford, she went by me saying she's a beautiful presenter, and she had this great idea for Afro hair. Developed the idea, again, wind in sails, self-belief, getting that plan down, and then she's just got her whole range now into Superdrug. So that's the entrepreneur side. And then I also work with big corporates, big organizations. They call me in to help around leadership, mindset changing. And that's worked with big banks. Did a lot of work last year, coaching to people at Google. So some, and then individuals will come to me and say, I do pro bono work as well around some of the, cancer work that I work on as well. I'm ambassador of a breast cancer charity. I've been doing that for 10 years now. And I work and I help coach them because they've got their own issues. It's totally all about fundraising and developing and those things. So a real cross section of organisations, pro bono, and individuals, entrepreneurs, and corporates.
Can I ask about your mission? So 1 million thinking fearlessly. What does that mean?
I really wanted to set myself a bit of a goal over the next, I am 50 years young, and I really wanted to set myself a goal over the next 5 to 10 years, a tangible goal. So I feel like there's a lot of fear in the world at the moment. And like I said earlier, I think fear makes people retract. It makes people very insular. It creates a real narrow mindset. And I really want to help 1 million people think fearlessly, because I believe that's where the change happens. That's where the magic happens. That's where you light up yourself and light up everybody around you. If we can adopt this thinking fearlessly mindset, I think we can create the monumental change, not only that individuals need, but companies, corporations, and overall the planet needs. And interesting enough, my third book I'm just writing at the moment is What If Mother Nature was a real woman who lived amongst us? So it's called Mother of Gods, Man and Earth, and she's Mother Nature living on the planet Earth. And obviously we all know what's happening at the moment, and she's got a pretty fearless approach, I can tell you, in my novel. So I really want to help people to wake up, to say, come on, we can all think fearlessly. If we set ourselves that goal, get our tools into place, and it's a way to be that I really think is going to benefit everybody.
So what do you think, Julia, is the key to actually engaging people? Because you want to reach a million people. You probably want to reach a lot more than a million, because you want a million to actually do it. You want to convert 1 million people to change their behavior. And it's a huge challenge. I worked for years on a behavior change campaign, which was called Global Sharing Week. And that was about inspiring people all over the world to share resources in their communities. And it's tricky. It's hard. It's hard to get people to do stuff, to change things in their lives. And so how are you going to do that? How are you going to inspire people to behave fearlessly and to change their mindset? Because that's no small feat.
No, I mean, I think you can only, with anything, you start with yourself. I've started with myself, my own personal journey. And I did a talk last week at the cancer charity that I help around working with cancer. And I met 50, 60 people who are going through cancer at the moment. And afterwards, I had a little chat afterwards, and they were like, wow, we are you right now. We've been going through cancer the last year, and there you are, 5 years out of your second diagnosis, and 10 years out of your first, and you're standing up and you're talking, you've got a good life, you're really healthy. So I think anything starts with you. And then what I've been doing, I'm developing a series of courses. One is around Thinking Fearlessly Me. One is around Thinking Fearlessly for entrepreneurs, and one is around for Thinking Fearlessly for leaders, which is much more of a corporate package and program. And what that is, it's a combination of videos, it's a combination of exercises and things that you can work through, inspirational stuff, and actually a lot of self-examination. Again, this is something that you have to lean in and really want to do and be part of your own personal journey. And like I said earlier, that can either be caused by people go through big traumatic changes, or they just really want to drive forward and do something inspiring for themselves. So I've got these courses I've been establishing.
Do you find, Julie, that age is a factor in all of this? I mean, do you see more people in their 50s? Are people in their 50s more resistant to this kind of change, or are people more fearful in their 50s? I mean, is age a factor?
I do think age, I do think people are talking a lot about, being 50s, and almost like there's a little bit of, some of my friends around me are ramping, almost like ramping down. And I'm just saying, well, why you're ramping down. Is that, are you happy in your job? Have you just been doing it for too long? Are you not learning? Are you not growing? For me and some of my friends that are still growing, they're really happy in their careers. They've got mission, they've got purpose. You look over in Japan, Ikinaya, people are going back to university at 75, 80 and retraining with purpose and meaning. And me and Andy was saying this week, he knows someone that's, in their 70s retracting and shrinking down in life, but someone that's 82 that's doing weightlifting and my dad is 76. He's head of this art society. He's a painter. He's got 2 acres of land. He's head of the head teachers union. He's just so filled with purpose and motivation. So I'd like to say it's a real mindset thing, but I think we just can't be bogged down in, I'm 50 now, I'm 70, I'm 80, where actually, it's got to be around what I believe you can grow until, the day you die, really. We're all growing and learning every single minute.
You did say, actually, I read something recently, I think you wrote on LinkedIn, I'm not retreating to a quiet life anytime soon. I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. It's you're onward.
Well, it's interesting. I've done a lot of self-analysis, and I went back and did a professional coaching course. And as you can imagine, read thousands of books when I've been going through my own personal cancer journey. And there have been people in my life around me who've said, look, you've had 2 aggressive cancers now, maybe go to a farm, buy some chickens and pot around. For me, that is the quickest way for me to go downhill. For me, it's about creating momentum. It's constantly learning. It's constantly growing. And I think people say that don't understand the mindset of someone that's been through something as critical as I've been. And again, if you read Radical Remission and some of the Blue Zone work, it is about people who grow into their 90s, into the 95, into the 100s. So I think people that say, the opposite of that haven't really got self-awareness around what it takes, I think, to move into a fulfilled life. So I'm never going to retire. I'm just saying it. I mean, I love the 100-Year Life book, and I'll be the person that will be doing things till I'm 100, pottering around and making blinds and developing things, because that's just really key to living the best life you possibly can.
I mean, it sounds like that's what your dad's doing right now, which is brilliant. But I think when you watch something like Blue Planet, a lot of what they talk about in there is this isn't, you can't be isolated. In the successful communities, it's where, as you're aging, then you're supported and you're encouraged. I think the tendency over here in the UK, and of course I'm just being generalist, is that when you get old, you're over the hill and we don't need you anymore. And I think that's a problem, a societal problem that we've got.
Yeah, and community and connection is absolutely everything. And some of the research that I was doing around for my book Generation Share, which was all about sharing and community and the health benefits of that. And actually, there have been studies that have shown that people who are more connected in communities have better health outcomes. And that if you have poor health and you join up to a buddying scheme, or you get involved in some kind of community program and you're out connecting with people, your health will improve. So I think that connection is a huge part of it.
Yeah, I was out at the New English Art Club, which is it's been going for about 200 years, something like that.
It sounds very posh, Andy.
It does, but it's not actually. It was the first. It was the first exhibition that allowed women to exhibit. So way before the Royal College and all that sort of stuff. Not the Royal College, the Royal Academy. But at the awards, it was Giles Brandreth, if that's how you pronounce his name. But he was actually brilliant. But he was talking about his own depression, actually, when he'd lost a parent, he'd lost his seat in Parliament and things like this, and he was saying that he went to see a psychiatrist, and they said, top 3 things to make you happy. 1, have a passion. 2, be a leaf connected to a tree. And by that he was meaning don't be a leaf and just kind of float around and eventually land on the floor and people walk over you. Be connected to something, to a body. And then the third thing was be active, do stuff. And I just thought that, really connects with a lot of what you're saying. And I just kind of wonder, would that be part of your mantra, if you like, for this kind of way of living and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think it's really important. I actually, this year I joined WACL, which is Women in Advertising Communication Leadership, which is a really amazing champion of women in, across our whole industry. And I've really, really enjoyed being around these, dynamic people and feeling part of something. I exited my business last February and did feel a little bit a sense of a leaf floating around. I've got a great network of friends and people, but I really wanted to feel part of something. And I'm heading off to Cannes Lions next week to spend some time with the girls and really, so I think that's really important. But also I think it's, and I put on my post this week, it's also about acknowledging vulnerability. You can have a lot of strength, but you can also acknowledge vulnerability. And as you know from LinkedIn, I've had a really bad cellulitis episode again this week, which is a bit septicemia, and I've had to go to hospital every day on a drip. And I have had times, seriously, Andy, where I've laid under the tree in the garden thinking, I had a really premature baby, 18 months old, I had my first cancer. So I'm acknowledging the fact that I've had deep vulnerability and I've had deep low points. But what I am saying as well is there are steps that you can help yourself with and people around you in your community. And if it wasn't for my friends and my family and the support around me, I definitely wouldn't be here today, I don't believe. So I think it's acknowledging and reaching out to your tribe. And in my book, Thinking Fearlessly, I speak about who's in your tribe, because as much as people can champion, inspire you and support you, there are people that can exhaust you and drain you and take away your energy. So I have to in self-preservation be really careful who I hang around with. Mm-hmm. And I'm open to new friends all the time.
Yeah, it's so important. I hear you. I've had those periods in my life where, suddenly you realize there's some kind of friendships that perhaps are not serving you very well, that have actually become quite toxic and draining, just exhausting. And you have to stand back and you have to say, actually, this is not what life's about. And I think when you do go through those periods of absolute challenge, and it's like that whole thing of fair weather friends, isn't it? You really do find out who your friends really are. And sometimes, it's almost people you barely know that actually turn around are the people that come running to support, So I think it is really interesting. And I absolutely agree that whole vulnerability aspect. And also there's something, isn't there, about, Renee's infamous, TED talk about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability. If people haven't watched it, it's really quite extraordinary, isn't it? And I think there really is something about how we acknowledge vulnerability, because we're all human. Everybody at some point in their life is going to need help. And everybody at some point in their life is going to be able to offer help. And so it's just how we recognize and acknowledge that. And we all have our challenges. No one has a challenge-free life. It doesn't exist.
I'd also say as well, just building on that, I think when we talk about fear is a really negative emotion. Nervousness can be channeled positively. If you're about to go on stage and do a TED talk, you might get a bit nervous, but that's good. It gets your adrenaline going. Fear, that stops you doing anything. Fear is so negative. Fear brings you down. If I'm going to go and do a pitch or something like that, I don't want to be scared. I want to be a bit nervous. Of course I do. It gives me a bit of an edge. I think there's quite a difference. You've said, I have one life and I intend to lead it fully. Everything that you've done, everything that we've just talked about, beaten 2 cancers, you've got 2 kids, successful businesses, you're a novelist, you're a business mentor, you've just set up a new business. What else is there?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, I am going to learn and grow. What I am trying to do at the moment is I am setting up 2 businesses, which I think are longer term, as in 5, 10, 20 years. So my other business, which is Land of Colourful Creatures, originated from my first novel, which was illustrated by Marie Jolie, 130 illustrations. And we've created a wallpaper company to start with and fabrics. And we're hoping to exhibit in Paris in January. And that's such a beautifully creative project. But I am super open to change, to opportunities. I think I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always changed and pivoted. And I always get really sad when I hear people say, oh, I've got enough friends and I don't have enough time for them. And, and I'm going to keep doing this job till I'm 60. I know I hate it, but, I have to do it to pay the bills. That's the opposite of my mindset. I'm really open to new friends and new opportunities. And that doesn't mean the friends that I've left in the past I don't love. Quite possibly we've just grown out of each other for very, very many reasons. And, a couple of friends I've let go over the years, I still absolutely adore them. They are just not right for me in my new time. And, being, one of the massive things that happens when you go through cancer is such a sense of awareness. They call it the wisdom disease. And I can't explain when anyone goes through any trauma, anything that happens, it can be anything, you really become super, super aware. So I am open to lots of possibilities for the next, I got signed off 6 weeks ago, cancer-free. So for
Amazing.
the next 40 to 50 years,
Fantastic.
I'm open.
That is a huge milestone.
Yeah, so.
That is a brilliant milestone. So moving forward fearlessly. And how will you know when you've got the 1 million people?
Ooh, that's a really good point. I think potentially it could be like how many people buy into my courses, how many brands and businesses I work with. Over the last couple of years, I've probably, been racking up quite a few hundred anyway. But I think it's a stance that I really, I just want to sort of like emanate as I go through life. And I think if you reached out to 10 or 20 of my friends, or you looked at any of my Instas or LinkedIn posts, I think you would say that Julia's acting like a thinking fearlessly mindset anyway, and hopefully already rippling out across people I don't even know. People come up to me when I did this talk last week and say, oh, I really love your LinkedIn. And sometimes I think, oh, am I oversharing? Am I being too vulnerable? But other times I just think I'm just going to be myself, and hopefully that will help people think, oh, I can get through really, really tough times in my life and, come through it and grow through that experience, because we all hit these obstacles, but it's not hitting the obstacles. It's about how do I navigate, pivot and work around them to live the best possible life that we can.
I love it. And I that's very much about what this podcast is about. It's about the ripples that, that we can affect by doing this podcast, that people hear it and they relate to it and, they feel right. I love what Julia's saying, and these are the steps that I'm going to take to start bringing some fearlessness into my life. Julia, it's been fantastic talking to you. I've absolutely loved it. I love all the practical things that you do, where you talk about having a plan. I think that's so important, having a focus, these small steps that you can take to get there, and how everybody can embrace the fearless mindset. And I'm hoping lots of people listening to this Would Be Something podcast will take that on, because we can all do with a bit of fearlessness in our 50s. Don't you think, Andy?
Fantastic. Yeah, no, thanks, Julia. And also, if any of our listeners want to get in touch with Julia, you can do it through us. If you email us at 50somethingpodcast@gmail.com, and we shall pass on your comments. That's it. That's it for this one. We'll see you again very soon when we've got another very special guest, and we'll reveal that closer to the time. But just now, thank you so much, Julia Leckey. Fabulous, wonderful to speak to you. Okay, so thank you, everybody. This has been the 50-something podcast with me, Andy Barlow, age 57.
And me, Benita Matofska, age 57, but slightly younger.
It's been wonderful chatting. Thank you so much again to our guest, Julia Leckey. Please email us on 50somethingpodcast@gmail.com. And ask any questions of us. We'll try and answer them in the following pod. But failing that, we shall see you next time.